At the end of the day, she's made $1 million in payments to them, but then she got sued here and hasn't been able to because she spent $6 million in attorney's fees. That is unrefuted. She still intends to pay those pledges.
We're going to talk about the insurance litigation and everything that it exposes about the lies Amber Heard has been telling.
Elaine's closing arguments to the jury, within which one of the main arguments that Amber could not pay over, not just pledge, but pay over these donation monies, was because she was being sued and had to pay $6 million in legal fees.
It now sure looks like those lies have been substantiated and repeated by her attorney, Elaine Breedhoft.
If that's not true, i.e. if Amber did not actually pay those fees, then that could spell serious trouble for Elaine Breedhoft.
But we did solve now, or know, the mystery, which is who is paying for all these attorney's fees. We absolutely know, because what you have there on the screen, Andy, is an admission in the Travelers versus New York Marine lawsuit that Travelers Insurance paid in excess of $5 million in attorney's fees to Elaine and other lawyers to defend Amber Heard.
That was filed back in 2001 between New York Marine and another insurance company, Travelers, and that they were arguing about who needed to pay for what. Now, there has long been at least speculation that Travelers had some role in Amber Heard's defense, whether paying for it, whether hiring an attorney, because one of their senior vice presidents of something or other, Pamela Johnson, had been seen in attendance in several days with Amber Heard's team at the Depp versus Heard trial. But this is really the first confirmation that we've gotten about that lawsuit.
Because there seems to be an underlying litigation between two insurance companies that sought to give Amber Heard some discretion by not mentioning her name. But don't worry, I'll explain how these relate in just a moment. But in this lawsuit, it specifically says that one of them has incurred in excess of $5 million in fees, as at the time of filing their answer to a counterclaim. As I said, I'm going to explain this in just a moment. But if that being the case, if one of these insurance companies have paid those funds, and it's not Amber that's paid those funds, then Elaine has essentially misled the jury.
See, this insurance company was paying for Amber Heard's legal defense. In their complaint, line 13, on or about September 4th, 2019, Heard tendered the underlying action to New York Marine. On October 1st, 2019, New York Marine accepted Heard's defense of the underlying action subject to reservation of rights. Specifically, New York Marine advised Heard that New York Marine could provide a legal defense, but that to the extent California law does not permit an insurer to indemnify the insured, no indemnity can be provided.
There's a reason why we haven't heard of it before now, and it's because the parties chose to use some discretion to not mention Amber Heard. However, it is crystal clear from the allegations in the complaint that this is the case that they are referring to, that this is essentially a situation where both New York Marine and Travelers Insurance have provided policies to Amber Heard that include some type of coverage for defamation. And so as a result, both of them have a duty to defend. And what they're essentially arguing about in this lawsuit is what exactly does that duty to defend mean?
So if you'll notice in this paragraph, there are some words that have quotations around them. Insured, bodily injury, property damage, and I'm going to focus here on personal injury, something they would cover. Because you have bodily injury, which is a slip and fall, car accident, broken bone, whatever, that's a bodily injury. Usually those are bodily injury coverages in these different policies. But personal injury is something a little different. And this personal injury in quotations is very important. Definitions and words are so important that this insurance policy, as every insurance policy does, which I mentioned in the last video, has a full section dedicated to definitions. So let's take a look at what the definition of personal injury is. Personal injury means other than bodily injury arising out of one or more of the following offenses: false arrest, detention, or imprisonment, malicious prosecution, the wrongful eviction from wrongful entry into or invasion of the right of private occupancy of a room, dwelling, or premises that a person occupies by or on behalf of its owner, landlord, or lessor, oral or written publication of material that slanders or libels a person or organization, including other forms of defamation, oral or written publication of material, including other forms of defamation that violates a person's right of privacy. So this is what they say they are going to cover: personal injury, which is defamation. If I am Amber Heard, I think I'm covered.
So first things first, this insurance policy was issued in California and is subject to California law. The issue that has come up is that Amber Heard was found to have willfully defamed Mr. Depp.
Do you find that Mr. Depp has proven, by clear and convincing evidence, that Ms. Heard acted with actual malice? Answer, yes.
Now, since Amber Heard was found to have committed a willful act, California law says this. California Insurance Code Section 533. Willful acts of insured, negligence of insured. An insured is not liable for a loss caused by the willful acts of the insured. In this case, the insurer being New York Marine and the insured being Amber Heard. But he, the insurer, is not exonerated by negligence of the insured or of the insured's agents or others. Now, based on the relevant law, the insurance company writes this in its complaint. Line 28. California Insurance Code 533 provides that an insurer is not liable for the loss caused by the willful acts of the insured. He is not exonerated by the negligence of the insured or of the insured's agents or others. This provision is an implied exclusionary clause, which by statute is read into all insurance policies under California law. And since Amber Heard was found to have willfully lied and willfully defamed Johnny Depp, here is what they say in line 29. The jury's factual findings established that Heard's liability was caused by willful acts of Ms. Heard. As a result, as a matter of California public policy and pursuant to California Insurance Code Section 533, the policy does not provide coverage for Heard's liability as reflected in the judgment ordered on June 24th, 2020.
We know that there is a policy issued by New York Marine Insurance that covers defamation. And we also see now that there is a traveler's insurance policy for Amber that also covers defamation. So she has two policies of insurance that both defend against this claim. And the one that we had talked about in the earlier video was the lawsuit by New York Marine Insurance against Amber, where New York Marine said, look, we have $1 million in coverage. We're not paying it to Johnny as she's demanding that they do because insurance doesn't cover intentional willful acts. And this was willful.
Now, according to New York Marine, their story of what transpired is that they received Amber Heard's tender, her request that they provide her with a defense in the defamation case in September of 2020. And at that point, they went and essentially approved of the lawyer that she had already hired, who was the very first person to appear for her in the case, an attorney from a local Fairfax firm called Cameron McAvoy. So New York Marine basically said, great, we'll go ahead and just pay for this guy. So travelers took a different perspective. Their view was that they would have to provide a separate independent counsel of Amber Heard's own choosing. And according to this lawsuit, the very first attorney that they funded was Roberta Kaplan. And then upon Roberta Kaplan withdrawing from representation, they assumed to provide Elaine Bredehoft to Amber Heard as her lawyer.
Suffice to say, this underlying litigation, and by underlying I mean this litigation was going on in the background to the main Depp Heard trial. But you didn't need to hear about it listening to the main case, and the jury didn't need to hear about it listening to the main case. It was underlying. It was in the background. It was arguments over fees, arguments over hourly rates, which is one of the interesting things to talk about.
One of the primary disputes between New York Marine and Travelers Insurance is that Travelers first basically didn't impose any kind of limits on what Elaine could charge for her rate. They simply put a cap of $2.5 million on the total defense. Well, Elaine ran through that in, was it even a year? I mean, it was well before trial. So then New York Marine went and basically required her to adjust her rates. They waived the cap, but essentially required that she charge a slightly lower hourly rate to be more reflective of rates in the community. And after making that revision, Travelers has then incurred over $5 million in legal costs. Now, this is as of about April of 2022. So this is right at the very beginning stages of the trial. We haven't even paid for the trial yet when we're talking about these kinds of numbers.
And ultimately, in this particular filing, it confirms on the face of it on page 4 that Travelers incurred in excess of $5 million defending the insured, which appears to be Amber Heard, in the underlying litigation. Now, as to why there might be litigation between these two companies aside from the main case, is that if you remember, both of these companies would have had a duty to defend arising from the policy, and so the argument was essentially about who was to provide representation and who was to pay for that representation. And in this case, one of the representatives withdrew and ultimately was replaced by Elaine Bredehoft. But coming back to the main point of this video, if all of this is true and the insurance companies have in fact paid these funds and not Amber Heard, and she has not paid these funds, then that is not a reason why she couldn't pay the donation monies and therefore was misleading.
Were it not for the fact that the payment of these attorney fees was a really important part of Amber Heard's explanation for why she wasn't able to make those charitable donations to the ACLU and the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles.
You didn't donate. It's a yes or no.
I haven't been able to to fulfill those
So that's a no, right,
obligations.
Ms. Heard?
I made the pledge. I want to be very clear. I pledged the entirety. I haven't been able to fulfill those pledges because I've been sued.
And have you completely fulfilled your donations to the ACLU and the Children's Hospital?
I have not yet.
And why not?
Because Johnny sued me for $50 million in March of 2019. And I have spent over $6 million.
Objection, Your Honor. This is a motion in limine.
And in fact, Elaine Bredehoft herself, in her closing arguments, represented to the jury that Amber Heard had paid $6 million in legal fees.
At the end of the day, she's made $1 million in payments to them, but then she got sued here and hasn't been able to because she spent $6 million in attorney's fees. That is unrefuted. She still intends to pay those pledges, honor those pledges.
Now, this looks like a problem because this looks pretty verifiably not true. And not only not true, Elaine Bredehoft knew it was not true because she knew it was travelers paying her bills, not Amber Heard.
She's essentially repeated something that Amber has said in her testimony, which is ultimately a matter for her. But if Elaine has repeated this to the jury being part of the court, remember, then that being the case, in my view, she would have misled the court, which is a serious issue, usually and very typically leading to disbarment.
And yet she deliberately represented to the jury that Amber Heard had paid these amounts. And you can see this kind of look of horror that passes over Camille's face when she hears this statement being made.
At the end of the day, she's made $1 million in payments to them, but then she got sued here and hasn't been able to because she spent $6 million in attorney's fees. That is unrefuted. She still intends to pay those pledges.
Does this look like Camille Vasquez heard this statement by Elaine and was shocked and surprised by it? And if so, who did she look at? Was it Ben Chu or the judge? I don't know if there's another camera angle which I'm going to look for in a minute, which catches who she might be looking at. It could be Benjamin Chu, or she could be looking at the judge as if to say, she can't say that. Elaine can't say that. But it's not customary to interrupt a closing speech. Lawyers generally don't do it. It is possible for a lawyer to object, to say that wasn't raised in evidence or that's contradicting evidence, but most lawyers don't do that. It's sort of a golden rule to not interrupt a closing speech. And if there is a problem, it should ultimately be raised later. But let me know in the comments what you think. Watch the clip again.
At the end of the day, she's made $1 million in payments to them, but then she got sued here and hasn't been able to because she spent $6 million in attorney's fees. That is unrefuted. She still intends to pay those pledges.
Don't know how much Camille and Team Depp knew about this other lawsuit. Maybe they knew about it. Maybe they didn't. We knew from the previous objection that Amber Heard's payment of legal fees had been the subject of a prior motion in limine. So maybe that's what Camille was upset about. But it's entirely possible that she knows perfectly well about this underlying litigation and as a result knew as soon as Elaine said that it was not true.
Now, the insurance company thinks that this provision is so powerful and such a game changer that it only cites this provision of California law on every count. Here it is. The first cause of action, declaratory relief as to the plaintiff's duty to indemnify Heard for this judgment ordered under the policy. And here, as you can see, they cite California Insurance Code Section 533, California Insurance Code Section 533. Here's the second cause of action. Again, California Insurance Code 533. Third cause of action. Here, they just strictly put in the title, California Insurance Code 533. So the insurance company's entire legal theory hinges on California's Insurance Code Section 533. Now, most states have a version of this law, and here's how it works, and here's the policy behind it. Insurance generally only covers accidents, and generally, accidents aren't willful acts. So as an example, let's say you personally have insurance that covers slip and fall accidents, and then you accidentally slip and fall and hurt yourself. Then you'll be covered. But now let's change the hypothetical. Let's say you willfully slip and fall and hurt yourself. Then you won't be covered under your policy because you committed a willful act. This was not an accident. This was not negligence. Now, when it comes to Amber Heard, the insurance company covered her during the trial because it wasn't clear whether she committed a willful act or not. But after the jury found her liable for committing a willful act and lying against Johnny Depp, now the insurance company's responsibility has changed. See, under California law, the insurance company believes that they do not have to cover Ms. Heard's costs anymore. And they are asking a California federal court to declare that they don't have to under California law. Now, because the insurance company was paying paying for Amber's legal defense until she was found liable. This also suggests that Amber Heard lied about why she didn't pay the $7 million divorce settlement to charity. See, Amber made it seem like she needed the $7 million divorce settlement to pay her attorneys to defend herself in the lawsuit. But now it has come out that Amber had taken out 2 insurance policies, one for $5 million, as reported by that umbrella guy, and then a second $1 million policy from New York Marine. So when Amber said that she needed the $7 million divorce settlement to pay for her legal expenses, that seems to be an obvious lie, because those payments or that coverage was actually paid by the insurance company. So she essentially kept that $7 million.
Let's take it a step further. Everybody, malice, malice, malice. They found malice. I agree with you. They found malice. It's a jury verdict is returned. However, if I represent Amber Heard, check out these other things listed on personal injury that they cover. Okay? False arrest, detention, or imprisonment. How about malicious prosecution? Malicious. That word, malice, the root word in the Greek. Sure, it comes from some Greek word. But malicious prosecution, that's so interesting to me. The wrongful eviction or wrongful entry into or invasion of privacy could be accidental, I guess. Feels like it could be purposeful or willful. If I am a lay person and I'm just reading this for defamation, I can understand why somebody would think, and maybe a jury would even agree, that this is something that could be willful or malicious. Very interesting to me.
Now, it's one thing for Amber to say something that's misleading. It may or may not go anywhere at all. It may or may not amount to perjury if she's lying in court, and there may or may not be any follow-up if she's found to have been misleading the court in that way, in her testimony. However, it's an entirely other thing for a lawyer to be misleading the court, particularly the jury in a closing speech, making a statement which ultimately, if all of this bears out to be true, the statement is not true.
However, let's get to what you all want to hear. Why I think she's going to lose. I'm doing another one. Why I think she's going to lose here. All right. So words are important. Definitions are important. These quotation marks are important. Personal injury, where we just read that definition. Caused by an occurrence. What does occurrence mean? Because if I'm reading this correctly, in law school, we learn how to break down statutes and break down phrases like this. So the only personal injuries that are covered in this policy are ones caused by an occurrence. So just a regular personal injury, how we want to define it, doesn't matter because it has to be caused by an occurrence. Now let's go back down to this all important section of definitions and see if we can find that word in quotation, occurrence. Oh, look at, what do you know? Personal injuries right here. The next one is occurrence. And what is an occurrence, people? We can say it together because I think you're all going to like this one. Occurrence means an accident, including continuous or repeated exposure to conditions which results during the period in bodily injury, property damage, or personal injury. Interesting, right? So if I represent the insurance companies, which I never would, I would quote this definition paragraph that says it's only personal injuries that are caused by an occurrence, and an occurrence is an accident. And this is tough for lay people that don't have these policies explained to them, but in my opinion, that's a pretty good argument that it's actually written in this policy within the definition of personal injury, has to be caused by an occurrence, which has to be an accident. And in case there was any confusion, in paragraph 6, they say the occurrence applies to letter B, which is, letter C,